1 weekend and 5 nights to finish the most challenging project that I've put myself up to. An outdoor table that doesn't look like an outdoor table, but it will also last a lifetime. With that being said, I decided to get a truck full of sapele, which is a tropical African hardwood which should last outdoors with no problem. Off camera, I milled up a lot of this lumber and glued it together so I can make 4x4 legs for both the benches and the table itself. Once they were dry, I took them over the joiner so I can get a flat face to take it over to the table saw next. If you can't tell, they're not perfectly square yet. So what I'm doing is I'm setting my table saw to the width of one of the sides so I can turn it 90 degrees and make a cut and make them perfectly square. Now that the legs are square, I want to go ahead and cut them all to the same length. To do this, I'm going to use something that I know is dead straight, like my track saw track. Using this straight edge, I can push all the legs up to it and then draw a perfectly straight line to cut on. Just like that, all my legs for the table and the benches themselves are the same exact height. It's time to get started making the apron for this table. I'm cutting these pieces of sapele down to 2 inches wide. All these strips will make up the general framework for the table itself. Alright, here comes part of the project that I know people are going to leave some negative comments over. To be honest, I don't really care. I didn't have time to sit there and mortise and tenon all these joints. So I used pocket screws and an absurd amount of glue. There are tons of better options to take care of these joints. I just was on a huge time constraint and simply just didn't have the time. So pocket screws it is. This table will never see a crazy amount of weight. It's going to my in-laws' house and it's just going to be an outdoor table to go sit in their backyard. I'm going to go ahead and dry assemble this entire thing just to make sure everything fits and there's nothing I need to fix before actually gluing it all together. Now that I know that everything joins together well, I'm gonna go ahead and disassemble the entire thing and label each joint so I know which way it goes back together right. While I already have it disassembled, I'm gonna go ahead and sand down everything nice and smooth. And I'm gonna go ahead and use a router and put a chamfer on each bottom of the feet so I don't have to worry about chipping if this thing happens to get dragged across the ground. I'm also gonna put a chamfer on the outside of each of the legs just so it's easier to do while it's apart. Now that all the pieces are ready, it's time to assemble this thing and glue it into place. This was the moment that I realized this table is going to be extremely heavy. I was honestly struggling to move this thing around by myself, and that's without a top on it. I'm putting a few support pieces towards the end of the legs so they don't flex whenever I go ahead and route the inside of this table. I'm giving this entire table the same treatment. It's getting a 45-degree chamfer on basically everything. I didn't think it was going to make such a huge difference, but it almost softens the entire table up. This entire table will be sanded to 120, but honestly I think one clip of sanding's more than enough. Nobody likes to watch sanding that much. However, after sanding I get to do my favorite step. Wipe this entire thing down with mineral oil to get all the sawdust out of the wood fibers, and you get a little sneak peek of what the end result's going to look like. With the table frame done, it's time to go ahead and move over to the benches. These will be assembled basically the same way that the table is, just on a smaller scale. If you've made it this far in the video, thanks for sticking around. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and go ahead and give this video a like if you can. It helps get the channel out to a bigger audience, which some of you guys know, some of you guys don't. I only have time to do these projects on the weekend and at night. As of right now, I still work a full-time job and I'm just doing this for fun on the side. I think anybody that makes YouTube videos for fun can see themselves doing this as a career, but that'll never happen without the help of you guys, so a simple like goes a long way. I also have a Patreon, which will be linked in the description if you want to join. Click the link and then you can read all the perks that you get for joining that. Now that the frames are done, it's time to go ahead and start working on the top. I set up a stop block because most of the parts of the table are the same size. You'll see it as it starts to come together. Once I got everything cut down to the correct length, it was time to go ahead and take it over to the table saw and cut everything down to the same width. With everything cut down to the correct size, I can lay it out and see how it looks. I cut down some spacers out of the scraps that I had laying around. It just makes it a whole lot easier with laying this table out. Now that everything is lined up the way I want it to be, I'm gonna go ahead and mark a straight line on each one of my joints. I'm not one of the big fancy YouTubers that has a domino yet, but I plan on using biscuits to join this table together. This is hands down the most stressful glue up I have ever done. It's just a lot of moving parts at the same time. I used Tight Bond 3 for this glue up, which has about a 10-minute working time, which seems like a long time, but 10 minutes was here, there, and gone in no time. I even hired some free labor, my wife, to get me to help glue this thing up because I was so stressed out about it. But it did all work out in the end. I tell you what, I did not expect this thing to be stuck to the table as much as it was. It took a serious amount of beating to get this thing to unstick from the table. I had to bring out the big boy dead blow hammer to get it to unstick from the table. And we're back with the same song and dance. Every single one of these little cracks is going to get a 45-degree chamfer along with the edges of this tabletop. Now, I'm moving on to the part that I'm honestly not too excited about. I picked up this Rubio Monocoat Duragrit. It's my first time ever using it. It's strictly meant for outdoors. I mean, it could probably be used indoors too, but it's meant for like UV protection, which I'm sure works great. But I had a bunch of problems trying to apply this stuff correctly. You're supposed to brush it on with the grain of direction, and you kind of keep brushing until the brush gets dry. But my issue is the finish dried out so fast. So with opposing grains, I was getting a lot of overlap that was very obvious. And I mean, it's probably because my shop is like 90-degree humidity, but you know, it did come out decent, but I wasn't super happy with it if I'm being completely honest with you. You can kind of see by the joints on what I'm talking about. I actually resanded this entire top off camera because I just wasn't happy with how it came out. And the second go around, I did get a lot better results, but I'm still not 100% happy with it. I mean, I'm not a big person on stains anyway, but with it being outdoors, I kind of had to. No knock on Rubio Monocoat whatsoever. I absolutely love them, and I'm sure a majority of this was user error. Moving on to the final steps, my mother-in-law requested that I engraved my logo into the end of the table, so that's what I'm doing here. One of the final building steps I had to do was to go ahead and glue up the tops for the benches. They're going to be very similar to the way the table is, and they'll be getting the same edge treatment that the entire rest of the table has gotten. Can you guess what it is yet? A 45-degree chamfer. Now I didn't have long enough clamps to reach end to end for these bench tops. So what I did here is I took 2 straight long pieces of like cut off sapele I had, made some little wedges, and then just beat the wedges in. It worked way better than I thought it would, so I'll definitely be using this again in the future. Final step before assembly is putting in these figure 8 fasteners. I got them off of Amazon. I'll make sure I put a link in the description. As this build's coming to an end, if you've made it this far, once again, thank you. This project was extremely challenging and very hard for me, but at the end of the day, we made it work. All you gotta do is get out your shop, have fun, build something, and as always, stay salty.